Alright, so I'm Scott Magnan. Logan kind of already introduced myself and Emily, but so I started off as a custom operator in '97. Actually grew up on a dairy farm and then became a custom operator. We started with a small two-wheel drive tractor and a 3600. So I've seen the industry, the manure application really change a lot from then to now. Really, even in the last 10 years, it's come a long way. So I think to talk about manure injection might be kind of interesting to hear where we started, and we already kind of talked about where we are with Logan's operation. So in roughly like 2008, 2010, we started. UVM Extension approached us about running a toolbar injector, and that was just a fixed point 5-row manure injector. My first comment was, I don't know if farmers are going to use it. Everyone thinks it's going to pick a lot of stones and break down and be kind of slow. Not sure if it'll go, but they said, well, that's the purpose, is to find out if that actually happens or if there's some benefits. So I think right off the bat we found a lot of that was true. It was kind of slow. We had a lot of breakdowns on that unit, some plugging to deal with, definitely some hurdles to work with, but we still had farmer interest because of the agronomic benefits, reduced odor, able to put down higher amounts without runoff, just being able to go out and do work after you had done the practice was a selling point for some. So there was some encouraging things that came out of that project, which was a reason to keep the bar moving forward. So myself and a lot of other people here have been working on that role, trying to figure it out. My next big move came in, I guess 2014, maybe 15. I was headed out to Iowa to do some ag leader training stuff, which I was just getting into, and saw an ad in some farm magazine for the PTI injector, which used discs in place of the shank units. So right off I could see some advantages there as far as being able to increase our ground speed, get our width out a little bit further on the tank mounted injector, a little less horsepower. Just saw a lot of things that might work better. So I called the owner of the company, said, hey, I'd like to go out and check out your unit. Would you be willing to do that, and where could I stay? Is there a place near Iowa City that you could stay? He's like, oh yeah, I'd probably stay here. And he called me back 3 minutes later. He's like, why don't you just stay at my house? So I was like, all right. So I stayed at his house, checked out his toolbar, and we ended up putting one on later that year, 2015, and that was one similar to this. He's changed his design a lot, but we were definitely able to become a little bit more efficient. We were out 20 feet, increased ground speed. We added a flow meter with control as well as monitoring, so we were able to just punch in our rate, go. Had to work through the learning curve there as well. And we still have that first BCI unit, we're still doing it. We found that definitely with that tank mounted unit, there's definitely a point where you kind of outgrow it a little bit, or you need to move to 2, or a drag line system becomes much more efficient. So our custom operation, we've geared down to some smaller farm operations with that tank mounted unit, and Logan does a lot of the bigger operations where just the economics make sense in either direction of how to manage your farm or manage your fields. With the tank mounted unit, we can control our flow rate, so we can cut that down in some smaller fields to 3,000 or 4,000. We have to cut our ground speed, same as Logan did. We have to slow it down on hay ground, so we don't have that tillage effect. So hay ground is slower got farmer Tim Magnet who owns this. We sold it to him this spring. We started to be a vendor for VTI. So Tim used it in his corn ground. It's set up for corn ground. Uses a vortex blade, which goes in straight and then pulls soil up. Creates like a rooster tail effect. So the soil's moving above the drop tube. Manure goes down. When the soil hits these discs, falls back on it. So faster speed is good if you can get up 5-6 miles an hour. You start to get that rooster tail effect. Hay ground, you won't have that. On our unit, we flip the discs around, so now they're going in this way and they pull out straight. So we reduce our soil disturbance that way. So it's a way to use the same disc by just rotating them. We primarily do hay ground in the fall. We've started to have some customer interest in trials during the season. It's for the ash concerns or rock concerns. We haven't pulled a lot of stones, but there's some ash content. Dryness of soil is probably the biggest way to increase if it's too wet, you're going to increase the amount of disturbance compared to dry. So dry on hay ground is key. At least with these, you might get away with a little bit more with your setup. It's just flat.
Yeah, I mean, it's wet, it's not very, everything's tacky, everything sticks.
Yeah.
And dry is definitely, I mean, there's always a happy medium.
A lot was covered earlier, so I don't want to talk too much, but I can talk about GPS control. You guys are more interested in this particular toolbar, answer some specific questions.
So you put this behind your behind banks.
I do.
And how many more horsepower do you need pulling that bank versus, flat?
Not a lot more unless you got a lot of hills, maybe an extra 20-30 horse, but
Say it's more weight, more weight than power,
yeah.
because you gotta pull it.
So what unit, how big a tank are you putting this on? And how big of a tractor you got on it?
We're pulling with a Magnum 215 with a 5,800 gallons, a nice match, or a 275. Both tractors are pretty good.
Yeah.
We used the 7140 for a while. It's a good job.
Yeah, it was light. I think that's, if you had it really turn the tires to get it out.
Yeah. Bigger tractors. That was the main one on it.
It's like the experience injecting into the corn where people would pick the corn, so you have a lot of trash.
Yeah, we have, and with the point injector, that was like a way to do it. With this one, we're iffy to
This
it.
was definitely good.
Yeah, this was out of Iowa, so this was their solution to corn stover.
I've done trash once, like a corn stubble, once or twice, but it works good.
How many gallons per acre can you get on for this?
So it does a nice job in the 10 to 12 range. You start to push 13 or higher, and it starts to not look as good. Still better than if we were to surface supply, obviously, but we couldn't do it.
And can you drop it down and do 6?
Yeah, we can drop down to 3. If we go below 3, it's hard to get that valve even shut. So 3 is kind of like the base.
So the way, I guess, you should explain how the tank works, how that your GPS, your miles will calculate, tell what that thing what to do.
So we have a gate valve on the pipe of the spreader. So if we increase or decrease speed, the gate valve is going to move relative to speed. So if we increase our speed, it's going to slow the flow down. we increase our speed, it'll open that flow up. So it's fine. It keeps balancing it out so it stays consistent.
Which I think, I mean, I ran Scott's injector and felt a little bit of summer. It's just nice because you don't have to gear down, you know what I mean? Like, just pick your gear if you want to pull it at 4 miles an hour. It's going to adjust that game out to 4 miles an hour. If you want to pull it at 3 miles an hour, it's going to adjust it. You know, whereas this, you have to keep your hose hard and you have to pick up your speed, you know, to calculate the gallons. So it's definitely two different systems for sure on the way it works.
How's it work with sand manure? Sand lake.
So sand's not too bad as long as you have enough water to flow through it. It's fine. Hay is a bigger issue. There's a limit on the amount of hay you can put through. In fact, we went through that with Tim's. VTI makes a distributor for pig manure, and they send it to Vermont. It doesn't work.
So 2x4s plastic would bind up in it too?
Yep. Yep. Doesn't like anything solid.
I know hook blocks are a big one in ours.
Yeah, and you're limited on power on like how much you can get out of those hydraulic pumps to like grind things up. So I'd have to say these are more temperamental than Logan's, but I haven't run Logan's as far as getting debris and hay through.
A manure pit is for cow manure.
I realize that.
I'm not going to be upset when I find a hook block. I'm not going to be upset when I find with cow wraps, duct tape. A lot of people use duct tape. I get upset when the Minute Maid juice bottle gets jammed in that 3-inch line and I got to cut the line off because that's where I get irritated. Like I said, it's not a garbage pit, it's a manure pit. And I've actually had, you know, some fun with some of the partners' pits. Like they did construction one year, and I picked all the 2x4s out of the pumps. You know, obviously plastic sometimes gets blown in, but even it comes down to sometimes who's feeding the cows. You know, if there's plastic in the manger, they're not doing their bunkers. You know, and you know, people always wanting to negotiate on price. That's number one thing right there. I can pull into your place and I pump because I get paid when manure's coming out of that. When everyone's standing around watching Tyler take the garbage out of there, I'm not making any money. And so how do you know, that's probably one of the biggest things I can preach about drag lines, garbage injection. It's not going to work. You're not going to be happy with the way it looks. After a while, you get sick on plugging that. Now you got 3 plugged out in your cornfield. Now you got 3 rows that ain't getting no manure. You know, there's guys only going to get out of that tractor so many times to unplug that thing.
Now, with this unit, you said you got the gate valve.
Yeah, on the tank.
Could you have that set up so it was agitating what didn't come back here? You know, if you're
Yeah, you could set it up so you could agitate. You have to be careful how you set things up because where your flow meter is, you don't want to be reading that agitation rate. So the flow meter needs to be reading just the discharge. So you just have to pay attention when you're doing a setup. Back to the solids a little bit. I think there's design work and like things going on to fix that. But VTI is they went from a 3 down to a 2.5, which is a super bad move on these. So we moved Tim's back up to a 3 with an older setup, simple, open-throated, because he does have a fair amount of hay, or at least he did this spring with it being dry. So we had to work through that. So VTI is like looking at going back to 3s, looking at doubling the diameter of their pump, but not there yet. So we're fighting to make that better. What about inline shock?
driven, so you have to run a tractor with the remotes on. And it could be done, but rather just help. I'd just rather help people get to where they need to be to make this work. You know, our manure boat. We never had a boat in your pit. We find the stuff that's in the bottom, and you know. So our first 3 years we're cleaning out pits of garbage. Things have definitely gotten better. Sawdust is a little bit of an issue for us. Like they don't grind the sawdust long enough to get like sticks almost, and they get caught sideways almost in the end of those 3-inch hose, and then another one comes in, and then sand actually sometimes goes through the injector better than sawdust because of not having the bark and
So how do you know if one of them lines is plugged? The flow meter tell you because there's less flow?
No, you gotta watch.
You get out, look at it every 15 minutes.
want to start jumping around a little bit though, it won't stay at your target. If you have a lot of, like if you have like 4 or 5 plugged, I think it's gonna so that gate valve's gonna be constantly fighting. So if you want 7,000 gallons an acre, it's going like 7,400, 5,400, you know, fluctuating a little bit. You know, when a lot of them are plugged.
You'd see it if a lot were plugged. Yeah, it's just gonna move flow over to the other ones, so you're gonna put down the same amount to the point where it's working.
You'd see it in the trench too, like this one's all of a sudden, like you said, taking all the manure, now there's manure running right out of the ground. So
You're generally running next to your last pass, so you can kind of eyeball it. The truck driver will say, hey, it plugs. There's not a lot of pressure to push through those plugs. It's pretty low pressure by the time you divide it by 8.
we did change, actually we changed on our switch pipe. It was actually, it would plug with sawdust. It wasn't an open face valve. We did change that, put an open face valve on there. Definitely works a lot better for us. There's, I think, like I said, every farm's different on the way it's going to work, and everyone adapts to, you know, how to make it work on your farm. You know, it might be putting a culvert in to get underneath the road, or boring, or if you want to do it, you can get there. I mean, Larry, they do a lot of drag lining over our way. You guys have, what, 2-3 miles underground line? Yeah. You guys are pumping how far from one farm to the other?
We hook up all the way.
Dude,
We got a booster pump.
your pressure's way lower though on those big underground lines rather than, you know, pushing it through a, you know, when you're trying to get. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I believe there is grant money for underground line and stuff like that. We bored underneath the road in St. Albans. We used to go through 7 culverts to get to the 200-acre field. Now we just hook it up, and it's a lot nicer. It took half a day to get through all the culverts. You have to call this neighbor because you got to go pull the hose out of the lawn, come back this way. It just,
Components of the river
yeah.
program.
Yeah, like I said, if you want to do it, you can definitely get your farm adapted to it. You can't be scared of it. It's a win all the way across the board, in my opinion.
I guess if you're a custom guy and you're a farmer, and if you don't want to help him out, you're gonna pay more it's going to be longer and harder for him to get that over in that distance. But if you can shorten that distance,
Your price is gonna go down, right?
gallons a minute quicker.
Like if there's a riser out of the ground right here and it pulls in, they're gonna set one flat and it drags and we're going. We're not going around the barn through the driveway and underneath the culvert. Time's money.
Scott, do you have anything else you want to add about this toolbar?
Okay.
Covered it all.
Yeah, I think people would ask questions. I think if they
Yeah,
had
yeah.
'em.
Are there any other questions for Scott before we kind of wrap up this part? All right, well,
Cost on a unit like this.
Roughly 30 to 35,000 with the distributor, with their distributors.
That's the issue with the drag lining. We got a bunch of fields that are big enough to set up drag line, but if you had something like this,
Yep,
Right.
around the corners and the field, yeah.
you had a smaller unit to change, but that's really not.
Yep.
well, thanks, folks. So we'll have Logan run this guy out here. If folks want to grab a beer and watch a tractor inject manure, sounds perfect.
All I
Are you
ask
coming
is,
back to a group setting?
Yeah, we probably won't. So if you,
Okay, yeah, so I do have one other pitch.
Scott has another pitch for everyone before we.
So anyone that's into precision ag, I just started through a grant, starting a network so everyone could be on the network and help answer questions. We've got a couple of people I've worked with for a while, farmers that I felt were good teachers, so I put them in the grant to help other farmers. So rather than all the precision ag questions coming to me, I thought it'd be cool to have this network where farmers could interact and some of the repeat questions could be answered by people that have already dealt with it, and throw some new questions in. Maybe they're hesitant to call me, but wouldn't be afraid to throw it on the app. So if you're interested in signing up for that, you can come see me.
And if folks want a beer, we just have a sign. I'll go over there, but we have like a not sign up. Just put your name down. It basically releases us from liability if you do something dumb after you have a beer that we gave you. That's it. And I'll go over there and show you all.